But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go, because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it. And the reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last weekend.
Yeah, maybe you should get the lawyer that worked on that Covington Catholic school case. What was that, a $200 million settlement? I think, Charlie, you could use the money, and your students definitely could too.
The air crackled with a kind of delicious tension, the kind you only get when a media titan is about to stumble and someone else is ready to light the fuse. For months, whispers had swirled, then erupted into a full-blown roar. Charlie Kirk, the firebrand founder of Turning Point USA, was done with the casual smears, the lazy insults, the drive-by defamation that had become The View's signature. He wasn't just annoyed, he was incandescent, ready to unleash a legal nuclear option so brazen it sent shockwaves through the very foundations of daytime television. This wasn't just a threat, this was a war, waged with subpoenas and press releases. And at its heart was a $100 million bombshell.
They were out there, Nazis were in the front of out there in front of the conference with anti-Semitic slurs.
Whoa, the drama. Charlie Kirk's organization, Turning Point USA, threatened to sue The View. And let me tell you, the nonsense that ensued is really something.
But let's rewind. What truly ignited this inferno? It wasn't a single comment. It was a drip, drip, drip of condescension, culminating in a moment that pushed Kirk over the edge. After his Turning Point USA Student Action Summit, a gathering of 5,000 young, conservative high school and college students, The View decided to drop a narrative so incendiary, it bordered on journalistic malpractice. One host, with a casual wave of the hand, conflated these thousands of bright, engaged young minds with a handful of fringe protesters who had gathered outside the event, brandishing anti-Semitic slurs. Imagine, if you will, the sheer audacity, the chilling disregard for truth, the sweeping dismissal of thousands of students who had traveled across the country, spending their precious summer and hard-earned money to engage with conservative ideas. They were painted with a brush of bigotry, smeared with associations they vehemently deny. And this wasn't just a minor gaffe, this was a public branding, an indelible stain, particularly devastating for minors whose reputations could be forever tainted by such reckless commentary. It was a digital scarlet letter etched onto their futures by a show that thrives on outrage. The very notion that 16 and 17-year-olds would have to live under the shadow of such a false accusation simply because a daytime talk show needed a villain was beyond the pale.
Charlie Kirk took issue with this depiction of his organization. Kirk maintains that Turning Point USA is not affiliated with SUES, anti-Semitism, or white supremacist. In a strongly worded tweet, the 28-year-old stated, "Talking to lawyers, many think we have a strong case. You cannot smear minors as Nazis and get away with it. It impacts them for the rest of their life. Hashtag sue the View."
The fallout was immediate, the outrage boiling over in conservative circles. Kirk himself, accustomed to public scrutiny, drew a line in the sand. He stated, in no uncertain terms, that while he could tolerate personal attacks as a public figure, smearing innocent, impressionable minors was an unforgivable offense. He wasn't just talking to lawyers, he was contacting them, seeking the best minds in defamation law. The message was clear. This wasn't going to be brushed aside. The View, a show infamous for its unwavering conviction, its often unshakable belief in its own moral superiority, found itself in a precarious position. The quiet murmur of legal discussions turned into a deafening roar, forcing an on-air concession. Whoopi Goldberg, with a tone that suggested more obligation than genuine remorse, issued a terse, almost grudging apology. "My bad," she mumbled, quickly trying to sweep the matter under the rug. But it was too little, too late, and felt entirely disingenuous to anyone watching closely. This wasn't an admission of wrongdoing, it was a tactical retreat, a legal shield deployed to ward off the incoming legal storm. It was an apology given under duress, not out of conviction, and that fact was not lost on Charlie Kirk or his supporters.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sunny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump. Uneducated white women, is my understanding. You have Latino men, actually, voting more for him. And you have, and black men was not the story. We're not the story here because they voted almost 80% for the vice president.
Right. Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach.
And then, like a phoenix rising from the ashes of media chaos, Megyn Kelly swooped in. She wasn't just a commentator, she was a self-appointed ringmaster, a verbal flamethrower wielding a microphone like a weapon. While other pundits were cautiously dissecting the legal implications, Kelly, with a mischievous glint in her eye, turned the entire affair into a masterclass in media satire. She saw through The View's performative civility, their carefully curated outrage, and their habit of punching down at anyone who dared to diverge from their progressive orthodoxy. She ripped into their disgusting, gross elitism, their complete out-of-touch nature with everyday Americans. She highlighted their condescending remarks about uneducated white women who voted for Donald Trump, exposing the thinly veiled contempt that often undergirds their discussions. Kelly didn't just pick a side, she picked apart the entire premise of The View, rearranging it into something far more entertaining and, crucially, far more devastating for the target. She wasn't an actor in this drama, she was the brutally honest critic reviewing the play in real time, while the actors were still on stage.
This time, she is picking a side, and she picked Charlie Kirk.
That hot mess that they air in the mornings, called The View, had to issue not one, not two, not three, but 4 corrections, legal corrections, 4 legal notes.
You let them in.
President, open your
You
mouth.
let them in and you knew what they were.
Right.
So you are complicit. Welcome back. You know, in Monday's conversation about Turning Point USA, I put the young people at the conference in the same category as the protesters outside. And
This wasn't just about a lawsuit for Kelly, it was about exposing a pattern. She gleefully reminded her audience of The View's numerous legal corrections. Not 1, not 2, but 4, stemming from previous factual missteps and reckless commentary. She pointed out their cowardice when their own fact checks were fact-checked, demonstrating a pattern of retreating in fear when confronted with undeniable truth. For Kelly, this $100 million lawsuit wasn't just an over-the-top, headline-thirsty ego trip. It was her kind of theater. She loves a good show, especially when it involves The View tripping over their own egos in front of a live studio audience. She wasn't supporting Kirk out of personal loyalty or adoration. She was supporting the spectacle, the glorious unraveling of a media institution she views as deeply flawed and intellectually dishonest. This was not a calm, measured debate. This was a drive-by roasting, perfectly wrapped in legal ease, and Megyn Kelly was the ultimate hype woman. She wasn't mourning the erosion of civil discourse, she was gleefully pulling receipts and tossing gasoline on the smoldering embers.
CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept The View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to neo-Nazis,
the absurdity deepened as Kelly dissected The View's often hypocritical stances. She mercilessly mocked Sunny Hostin's claim that January 6th was right up there next to the Holocaust and slavery in American history, exposing what Kelly saw as a grotesque distortion of historical atrocities for political gain. This wasn't a tedious courtroom drama with civil pleasantries. This was a war waged from a hilarious altitude. Kirk and Kelly, operating like stealth bombers of sarcasm, dropped pinpoint mockery from 30,000 feet without ever needing to circle back and explain the punchline. The View, in turn, didn't respond with fiery rebuttals. They couldn't. They were too busy performing spiritual yoga to cope with the sudden legal wrecking ball that had crashed through their carefully constructed facade of civility. This wasn't a lawsuit against a fringe blog or a social media troll. This was against The View, the midday volcano of estrogen-fueled gladiator combat, interrupted only by commercials and the occasional ill-advised joke about politics or basic facts. Kelly painted them as a perfect cocktail of chaos, a cauldron of unresolved personal grudges topped off with smug moral superiority.
Gun and declares, finally, a defamation suit with some style.
Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th president of the United States, yay, on January 20th of this month. Not everyone's happy about it, and many people would like us to be more focused on the insurrection that he personally unleashed, if you ask them. As we discussed earlier, they think it's as bad as like the Holocaust, and you don't have to take my word for it. Here is Sunny Hostin of
January
The View
6th was an atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history. And when you think about the worst moments in American history, like World War II, things that happened, like the Holocaust, chattel slavery.
Yeah, the January 6th is right up there next to the Holocaust and slavery.
And Kirk, recognizing this volatile cocktail for what it was, said, yes, let's sue that. He wasn't seeking peace. He was auditioning for his next cable news highlight reel, turning daytime snark into a primetime legal battle. He thrives on this spectacle, on being the center of attention, wagging a finger while yelling defamation like it's a new catchphrase. Megyn Kelly understood this game perfectly. She wasn't just supporting Kirk legally, she was supporting him spiritually, because she saw in him a fellow chaos agent, someone who understood that in modern media, credibility isn't earned through ethics, but through edge. The moment Kirk announced the lawsuit, Megyn didn't roll her eyes. She rolled up her sleeves. She didn't just critique The View, she dismantled its glittery delusion, asserting that it wasn't even good television, but rather a high-decibel potluck where everyone brought hot takes and forgot the facts. And now, they were being asked to pay the bill, quite literally.
They're disgusting. She's Anna Navarro in your wildest imagination. You could never solo host a show. You will only ever make it as part of an ensemble, and you could never hope to achieve the success that Tucker Carlson has. So you can sit in your little cheap seats all day long and enjoy your little negative henpecking, but your careers are going nowhere, and Tucker is about to dominate in whatever space he goes to.
And Charlie?
The critique extended to The View's perceived religious hypocrisy, as Kelly highlighted a particularly jarring moment where a host dismissed a public figure's belief in divine protection during an assassination attempt as unchristian and narcissistic. Kelly, with a sharp retort, defended people of faith, tearing down the intimation that a belief in God's watchfulness was somehow exclusive or judgmental. She wasn't just defending Kirk, she was defending a worldview, a way of understanding faith that The View often seemed to mock or misunderstand. Megyn understood exactly how this game works. The View flings out snide comments like they're tossing beads at Mardi Gras, knowing they rarely face consequences. Charlie caught one that hit him square in the ego, and now he was demanding reparations with a decimal point that looked like it belonged in a Marvel movie budget. Megyn wasn't just laughing at the audacity, she was cheering it on, seeing The View's downfall as long overdue. She had seen their sanctimony, their smug glances, their attempts to paint every issue in glitter and condescension. The moment someone finally threw a pie back, Megyn was ready with a fork.
Now they're being asked to pay the bill. Literally.
And then you get this little lecture from, forgive me, those bitches over at The View.
I'm a Christian girl. When something like this happens to you, like this assassination attempt, and you say something like God was watching me, that is a very unchristian thing to say because it's very narcissistic. Well, God was watching me and not watching them. There's something very disturbing.
Not what he said.
I should have pulled the plug on that mic yesterday.
That's obnoxious. I don't know what church she goes to. That is how people of faith talk, and the intimation is never, he was looking out for me, but not those monsters. It's no.
The profound irony, as Megyn so astutely pointed out, was that Charlie Kirk didn't actually need to win this lawsuit. That was the hidden punchline. The real victory happened the moment it was filed, the moment it appeared in news tickers, the moment social media started choking on hashtags. You don't sue The View to settle, You sue The View to shame. And Megyn Kelly, from her digital perch, was practically writing the playbook. She ripped into The View's intellectual gymnastics, their moral high horse, and their arrogant assumption that their midday monopoly on opinion was sacred. The beauty of it all? The View didn't even fight back. They sat in awkward silence, stirring their coffee, pretending not to notice that they had become the punchline. Megyn didn't need rebuttals, she needed the silence. Because silence from a show built entirely on volume is the loudest admission of guilt. Kirk and Kelly, an odd, unexpected tag team, were winning the PR war by simply pointing out that the Emperor had no wardrobe stylist. No one needed to stage a debate. The ridicule was enough. As the lawsuit slowly unfolds, Megyn continues her masterclass in media satire, dropping rhetorical bombs not just on The View, but on the audience that props them up. The people who think snide commentary in a soundstage equals informed opinion. She treats The View like a reality show that forgot it was scripted, and now they had a real plot twist, an actual lawsuit with real consequences, and an actual audience that was loving every second of the drama. She didn't stop at mocking the lawsuit. She took the opportunity to dismantle the entire ecosystem of faux empowerment, surface-level solidarity, and shallow debates passed off as deep dives.
We got more of it from Anna Navarro on The View. Listen to this person.
The Hunter Biden story, the scandal, the this, the that, it's also the story of a father's love. And Joe Biden has never and will never give up on his son Hunter, and will never treat him lesser than. And so he is a father first. Take it or leave it.
Yeah, serving on Ukrainian natural gas boards, smoking with prostitutes and throwing guns into school zones. There, but for the grace of God, go I. Are you kidding me?
But then he shows up at a state dinner.
She even dragged in the deeply polarizing Hunter Biden narrative, exposing The View's hypocritical defense of a father's love for a son whose alleged transgressions included smoking with prostitutes and throwing guns into school zones. This was political theater for Charlie, but for Megyn, it was pure comedic gold. Together, they were proving that daytime television isn't above scrutiny. In fact, it might be the perfect target. It's loud, self-important, and built on the belief that opinion equals truth. Megyn and Kirk just injected a reality check with the subtlety of a chainsaw. Their duet was digital, their synergy sarcasm, and their message crystal clear. If you dish it out on national television, you better be ready for someone to serve it back with interest. Megyn Kelly may not be filing lawsuits herself, but she knows exactly where to aim her verbal firepower. Her support for Charlie isn't born of personal loyalty, it's professional glee. She sees in him a fellow chaos agent, someone who understands that in modern media, credibility isn't earned through ethics, but through edge. So, while Kirk sharpens his legal arguments, Megyn sharpens her one-liners. They don't need to coordinate, the lawsuit itself is a symphony, and Megyn is playing the violin solo from a rooftop with a grin. Meanwhile, The View remains conspicuously mute. No witty comebacks, no righteous indignation, just the slow, creeping awareness that maybe, just maybe, they aren't untouchable, that their throne of self-importance isn't as fireproof as they thought. And Megyn, she's still sipping coffee, still laughing, still tossing metaphorical tomatoes from the balcony like a Shakespearean critic fed up with bad acting. This isn't about who wins the lawsuit, it's about who wins the narrative. And right now, Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly are co-authoring a chapter called How to Sue a Talk Show and Steal the Spotlight. No apologies, no face-offs, just two people with microphones and a spectacular lack of patience for sanctimonious nonsense. So, while The View stares blankly into camera 3, wondering how it all went so sideways, Kirk and Kelly continue their roast. No rebuttals, no counterclaims, just two voices narrating a takedown with flair, sarcasm, and zero regrets. Because in a world where mockery is currency, Megyn and Charlie are billionaires. And The View? They just got the invoice.